Welcome back everyone to the next episode, and in today's video we'll talk about camera settings. When I started in photography, the camera setting was the biggest question that I had, and you may have the same question as a beginner photographer. What's the right settings that I should use in photography? Well, that is a big question. The settings depend on the photography type that you will pursue. The settings will vary. In this case, we'll talk about landscape photography settings, the settings that I use in my camera to approach every scene. After many years of researching which will be the right settings to use on landscape photography, I came up with a list of tips, steps that I hope you can find interesting and help you to become a better photographer, to understand even more the piece of equipment that you hold in your hand, and to take advantage of the capability of your camera. With the modern DSLR right now, they're way advanced. The year before, when I started with digital, believe me, you will get even better final results applying these settings this list that I put for you. I hope you find this interesting. At the end of the video, I will leave a detailed list of all these settings or steps, how I call it, so you can go detail in and read it specifically. So as right now, I'm gonna talk like like a coffee chat. So we're gonna talk about the settings that I found most useful, and also we'll leave on the description of this video again the detail of this video and settings, so you can have a better appreciation, a better understanding what I'm talking step by step. So let's get to it. So number one, always use your camera and menu. Do not be afraid to use the camera and menu. Break that barrier of the programs in the camera. So use the camera and menu. More that you get used to use your camera and menu, understanding the functionality of every function, for so to say, you'll be more relaxed. You'll approach the scene with more confident on that. So shoot menu. Number two, the most important for me, I think, is always shoot raw. Raw files retain a lot of information. For example, the picture that you're seeing right now, it's a totally dark image, but as a raw file, I can recover a lot of the information that image has, like the example right now. So that's why it's always important to shoot raw, so you can recover all those details in the information. The raw file is a compressed information. It has a compressed information, compressed detail, and it's much easier to recover that in post-processing. So the number three that I found is the way that you measure, the way you meter the scene. For landscape photography, I use the matrix metering on my camera, and that's create the reading that I receive is a balance between the lights and the darks, and there is in my subject. So the metering, balance it out that, so I can then apply the correct shutter speed and aperture and ISO in order to get a perfect exposure. Another good setting is the white balance. We have different options inside the camera. White balance, I always shoot either Kelvin 5300 or I shoot auto white balance. So stay in auto white balance. You always can change these post-processing anyway. So auto white balance, just play safe. Picture control. Picture control, you have, once again, different options inside your camera. I like to use it as standard mode or neutral. They get me flatter tones. But once again, these type of settings, you can change it in post-processing. So these settings, they shouldn't take too much time or make you nervous about, oh my god, I have so many here, which one I use. So stay on the simple standard. The color space, this is a way complex topic to talk. It probably will take a whole day to talk about this. The color space that the cameras come in set up by default is sRGB, red, green, and blue. So stay there. I'm not gonna go over on this point. Stay at sRGB. Once again, if you wanna dig more, leave me a comment. I can, make a whole video about color space if you like. But sRGB is the way that I have my camera set up, and that's the way that I go. What's next? Then, when it comes to take a photograph and approach the scene, the most important thing is the composition. Once you plan your shot and you are there, you're gonna scout for compositions. And when it comes for the composition, I put a lot of things in mind. Number one, I use the live screen mode in my camera to search for different compositions in the scene and the scenery that I am in. That helped me a lot. I can put the grid on my screen, the rule of thirds, so I can, compose in the right way, lines, curves, triangle shapes. Composition is a whole another topic. We'll make a video about just about composition, because if not, we'll be talking forever. But use a live screen mode. While you are in live screen mode, if your camera allows you to do that, you have your histogram on right there. So always read the histogram if you're exposing the right way. The way that I do, I always pose protecting the highlights. Always protect the highlights. The shadows are easy to recover in post-production, but highlights are really hard to recover in post-production. So always shoot protecting those highlights. If you have the chance to, your camera also have your light meter, the camera light meter in your live screen, use that. So that will help you to balance out the composition. If you're advanced and you know how to take different exposures to then compose those images in post-production, like Photoshop, for example, then a live view screen with a histogram, you can take an underexposed photo for the sky and an overexposed photo for the foreground, and then you can take a perfect correct exposure for the whole scene, and then you can combine all three photos in Photoshop to create one image like this one, for example. So live screen mode is highly recommended if you can. Then always use the lowest ISO possible that your camera allows. My camera, Nikon D750, allowed me to go to ISO 50. But ISO 100 is the recommended ISO to always have in your camera setup for any situation. Always use a tripod when you take photograph of any landscape. Even if you have a really nice clear day, just rely on your tripod, use your tripod. And the last but not least, this is the most important part of it. I like to call it the composition pyramid, which include the shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and focus. That's my whole composition. So I'll always have in mind shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and focus to my images to achieve what I want. Then the next piece of the puzzle is the ISO, which we just named. Try to use the lowest as possible, the one that your camera allowed to. This will have less grain in your image, less noise, and digital. Grain was a film time. I'm very old, sorry. But the lowest ISO will give you less noise in your images. but if you can control the shutter speed, your aperture, and you're using a tripod, using a low ISO, it won't be any problem for you, unless if it's really dark and you shoot in the Milky Way. We'll talk about that in another time. So focus is very important as well of the pyramid. I'm sorry, because what do you want to show in that photograph? You want to show everything in focus, or you want to show some part of the image as the most important and the other one out of focus to drive the eyes of the viewer to that, that part of the scenery? Because that will depend what you want to achieve. I like to focus my image in 3 different parts of my screen, in per thirds, like I call it. And what I do, that I use once again live screen mode, and I go on my lower third part, I find a point, I use my focus ring to a point, I focus in that using my loop button just to make sure that I have a right focus, and I take a photograph. I take a second just in case, and then I move to the second third and do the same thing, and so on. So in that case, I'm sure that I'm going to have the same scene in different focus, and when I compose those images in Photoshop, my image will be completely sharp. But once again, depending on what do you want to achieve. So the apertures is another very important part of this pyramid. I highly recommend you shoot between f8 and f16 to assure that your image will be completely in focus and sharp. So most of the lenses between f8 and f16 are very sharp. They reach the best, sharpest point. So I highly recommend you use those between that aperture. But once again, this will change on depending what you want to achieve. It's up to you. I like when I shoot big vistas or big scenery to be between f11 and f16. So, and then like I just mentioned earlier, I focus on different part of the image, so I can have for sure my whole image completely sharp and everything in focus. Now, if I want to show just a focus in one specific area, I will go lower than f8 and put my focus in a specific part of the image to just give that sharpness onto that little subject. But that once again will depend what you want to get, and it's all your preference. So aperture is a very, very important part. And the last piece of the focus of the pyramid, is the shutter speed. So shutter speed will have a very particular influence on this. So it's all depending what you want to shoot, what you want to show. Let's say, for example, if you shoot in water, do you want to freeze that water, or you want to show motion on the water? Let's say there's a lot of clouds on this scenery behind the mountains in a storm. You want to freeze that storm, or you want to show motions to create drama on those clouds. So the shutter speed it's going to be depending once again what you want to get at the final result. So remember this pyramid. In your composition, you must have these 4 steps: shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and focus. So all those are very important. Like I call it the pyramid, the composition pyramid. So this is all the steps that I use in every single image, every single scenario, every single time that I go outside to photograph. These are my main basic settings, and I hope it's educational for you. I hope you can have a very useful of this information and start applying this the next time that you go outside and take photographs. I guarantee you will get a good result. One more thing. This year, my birthday came early, a couple days early. So this is what I got in the mail. I got the new, well, it's not that new, but for me it's new, the new Canon M50. from now on I'm gonna be able to vlog more with more quality, I hope, more professionalism. I'm super happy. This is my birthday present. I love this camera. I did a lot of research about cameras for vlogging, and this came out at #1. So I'm gonna leave a link on the description of this video of a guy who does great reviews. Is Tech Gear Talk. He does amazing reviews about the Canon M50, and I hope you like that video. Go watch his channel. He has a lot of videos about different gears. If you are thinking of buying some new gear, I highly recommend that channel, and I can't wait to go shooting with my new Canon M50. I'm gonna do a test of this camera to see how good this tiny little piece of equipment work in and landscape photography, and then I'll make a review of all the camera and a comparison. What's the word? I will compare my M50 with my D750, which is a full frame D750. This is a crop sensor. So I hope you like today's video. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.